Our modern Western culture places little to no value on the power of our nightly dreams to inspire, shift, and reorganize our lives. This podcast demands a deep reconsideration of the role dreams play on our path to a more vital and meaningful life. The following is living proof of the life-affirming power of dreams to affect change and redirect the trajectory of our inner and outer lives. These are the dreams that shape us. All right, so welcome everybody. Here we are with another episode of the Dreams That Shape Us podcast, and I am here once again with Leilani Navar. Welcome again. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me again.
Yeah. So we are here today to give you an amazing look at Leilani's podcast. We had her on the last episode, and we got to hear all about her amazing story with her health journey. And we are happy to share her amazing podcast with you guys as well, because we really think that you will get an amazing amount of insights and great information from her podcast if you're looking to dive a little bit deeper into more of, the techniques and the different ways that you can go about doing dream work. So our podcast is largely storytelling and looking specifically at dreams and throwing you little bits of insight and information on how to look at dreams and tear them apart and, piece away at what they mean for you. And if you listen to at least the first 35 episodes of her podcast, because things are changing for her, which you'll hear about in just a minute, you'll get some amazing interviews with amazing people who are doing some really amazing work with dream work. And you'll get to hear all about their process, how they approach dreams, and really dig into all of the different myriad ways that you can go about doing this work. And it's really, really cool stuff. And she does an amazing job hosting it all. And all of her guests are just very interesting people doing really cool stuff. So here we are with Leilani. I just wanted to introduce this episode before we get into her podcast so we can know more about her and why she decided to do this podcast and what this whole new development that is just about to begin for her is going to look like going forward. So thank you again for being here. And I guess to begin, I don't even know if I know this story, so I'm really interested. How did you decide that you even wanted to create a podcast?
Well, I think you really described a lot of it. I was excited about that idea of helping people open up a relationship with their dreams if they were newly curious about it, and also helping people like you who already have an appreciation for dreams deepen that relationship by being exposed to more ways of engaging with dreams. I think what led me to actually start a podcast about it was that I was throwing out lots of different things on social media related to the different things that I offered at the time. I was teaching fertility awareness for natural birth control and self-acupressure massage and talking about food as medicine. But every time that I would share something about dreams, I got a lot of feedback and curiosity from people who have always had dreams and thought they might mean something, but never had a good way in there. And like you talk about in your intro, have grown up in a culture where dreams weren't taken seriously.
Yeah.
So that seemed like an exciting kind of thread to follow, basically going along with where people's curiosity was. And I'm still teaching self-acupressure and doing some of that healing work online, but I've gone more and more and more into dream work, which of all the things I do, it's one of the things that translates best actually to working online. And it's so exciting and fulfilling to get these groups of people together who are from all over the place. The miracle of Zoom, as frustrated as we can all get with doing everything online sometimes. I've been so just moved by these circles of people from all over sharing dreams. So yeah, that's amazing. The story. Yeah.
Cool. Very, very cool. And when exactly did you begin that whole journey of doing the podcast? I'm forgetting. It's like what, a little over a year ago?
It was March of last year. So I actually had my first couple of interviews on March 13th, 2020, which, if you remember that date, it was right
Yeah.
when we were thinking about closing things. Like, that day, I canceled my patients in the clinic. And, no day before that, it was right at that tipping point. And then
Wow.
um, school ended up closing and I was at home. And so the transition to doing more online work and podcasting was, lined up perfectly with in-person things shutting down. So, and because I've been doing episodes on the new moon and the full moon, it's been 2 a month. So that's why we're around episode 35 now.
Wow. Very cool. Very, very cool. I mean, knowing how cool it's been for me to do this podcast, I mean, what would you say is like the most meaningful aspect of bringing people on a show and picking apart what they're doing with dreams? I mean, what is it for you that's most exciting?
I have learned so much. I learned something from every conversation. Like, each one, I've had at least one takeaway that has later come back to me in a question that I've asked about my own dreams or someone else's dreams, or a way of phrasing something, or, something new I want to dive into. Like, each person has their style and their insights. And so I've loved that. I mean, it's been, for me, like, this opportunity to connect with so many amazing people and get to, skip the small talk, like I say, and get to the heart of it and hear what they care about,
Right.
and learn from their dream work. A lot of these people have years more in to dream work than I do. And so there's been a lot of wisdom there. And I mean, that's probably my favorite thing about it, is connecting with people and feeling like I've started some friendships with such like-minded, like-hearted people. But a close second is hearing from people who listen. And sometimes it's just a quick thing like, I didn't remember dreams for months. And then I listened to your podcast and I remembered a dream that night. Or sometimes it's a bigger aha about their life or something.
Yeah.
But just getting that feedback and knowing that the conversations are floating out there and just contributing to the whole field of people paying attention to their dreams. I love that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I know for me, it's been so amazing to, because a lot of the people that I've personally interviewed for this podcast are people that I've known for quite a few years now, uh,
Mhm.
through the internet, through finding my little dream tribe.
Yeah.
And so it's been amazing to actually have an opportunity to have actual conversations with them. And
Hmm.
I mean, that's been like one of the coolest things for me, is to actually get them in a space where we can talk. And like you said, it's just amazing how much they bring to the table and how much I learn through listening to them and how they relate to their own dreams. And I know Jason personally sent me a message after he listened to your episode, and he was like, I learned so much from this episode. She looks at things in such a different way than I ever would. And he's like, that was really cool.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. I mean, listening to your podcast personally, I love it so much because, I mean, for a long time, like I've been doing DreamWork for about 15 years, and I don't even think I found anybody online until probably like 2015. I finally found IASD, which is the
Hmm.
International Association of Dreams, for people who don't know. Uh, Somebody introduced me to that whole group, and after that, I was like, oh my God, all these people are out there, and I never knew how to find any of you.
Yeah.
Um, so I'd been doing DreamWork for like almost 10 years all by myself. And then like coming into finding out all these different ways that people approach them and the different techniques, and even just like the ways that they go about looking at them was like so different than mine. And it was just wild and fascinating to see just how multidisciplinary DreamWork is. And just like in how there's many interpretations to one single dream, and so many people would look at the same exact stuff and go, I don't see that, but I see this. uh,
Yep.
you see that in the myriad ways that you can, work with your dreams. And it's like so fascinating and so wild to know that you have your own very unique approach and your own very unique language, and everybody else has the same. It's just
Mhm.
really, really cool.
Yeah, a it's such a vivid example of how diversity and people's unique way, every individual's even unique way of looking at something is not only valid but really enriching for the whole group. Like, I mean, I think that's what we see in group dream work, like we're about to play, you know, when you had all
Yeah.
those different viewpoints on your dream, and we were all kind of in a container of doing projective dream work and having that approach, but still everybody's unique perspective comes in and adds something to it. And nobody can be a real expert. You know, I don't think of
Right.
anyone as able to look at a dream and because of their expertise figure out what is going on there. Like we do get more and more fluency, I think, in the language of dreams, but no individual person's ever going to see the whole picture. We just can't do that,
Yeah.
you know? And so
Right.
I love how this is a part of life where I get to really feel, wow, we need each other. We all bring something so important to it. And I can't wait to find out what the next person brings. And each dream is like forever new and fresh and interesting. I mean, I learned something from every episode of your podcast too, just because each dream is new. There's always more.
Yeah.
It's always
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, and what you just said, I realized that I haven't even specified that yet. So, in this episode that we're going to play of Leilani's, I participated in a recorded projective style dreamwork dream circle with her and what, four other people?
yeah, you and me plus three. Yeah.
So, we look at one of my dreams, and it was one that was kind of stumping me for quite a while. I had a couple of follow up dreams that were still kind of prodding at the same issue. One of them we'll also look at in this episode, and the third one maybe I'll tell after the episode. Uh, and we get to see this amazing process of me being pretty in the dark about the whole thing, and you just get to watch like kind of aha moment after aha moment until it completely culminates in this kind of shattering of the whole unconsciousness of me with this situation and really coming face to face with something very deep and in such need of being held and seen and validated. And it's really a very touching and powerful experience for me, and was a very unexpected and a very incredible experience for me to have in the company of these amazing women that were there. And Leilani did just such a fascinating and phenomenal job holding the space and creating the container for me to feel safe to go there. And I think based on what I've heard from other people, all of you listening to this will see that completely as soon as we get into it. So I think my final question before we get into this is if you could give us an idea of where your podcast is heading,
Yeah.
because you're about to switch gears slightly, right? You're still going to do the dream work kind of stuff, but it's expanding into something even bigger, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm calling it an expansion rather than switching gears, although it is going to feel pretty different. The podcast is going to be called Turning Season now, and I'll be having conversations with still a couple of dream workers coming up in these first few episodes of Turning Season, but also all kinds of healers and change makers, visionaries and activists of the Great Turning. So I'll quickly explain what the Great Turning is. It's one of three stories of our time, of the time that humanity is in right now. And these are the words of Joanna Macy, who is an incredible teacher, wise woman who's been active in addressing climate crisis and a sustainable human society that cares for all people for 40 years. Like she's been at this a long time and has a lot of wisdom. And she
Wow.
talks about the three stories of our time. And one of them is business as usual. And in the story of business as usual, we can basically carry on the way we have been. And it's mostly about making more and getting ahead. to put it very briefly, but business as usual. We all see that, people not really thinking that we need to profoundly change how we live. And then the second story is the great unraveling, which more and more people are stepping into that lens now. Climate crisis and mass extinction and war and refugee crisis and racism, and just seeing how things are unraveling. And there are many people who live primarily in that story. And the third story is the great turning, which is the idea that right now humanity is making a great turning toward life-sustaining societies, toward a life-sustaining way of being on this planet that takes care of all people and that respects and loves and reciprocates with the ecosystem that we're a part of. So probably everybody listening recognizes those stories in some way. And I know that I live in all three at different times, but
Yeah.
I mostly like to spend my time in the great turning. And I love finding out who's doing what for the great turning. And I feel like that is not talked about enough. And you hear, I don't know if you hear, I hear a lot of people saying, oh, things are falling apart. Or, oh, why isn't somebody doing something? You know, this like cynical kind of defeated feeling, which is what most mainstream media kind of fosters in us. Like we mostly see the disaster stories. But a lot of somebodies are doing something. And that's what I'm excited about talking about and sharing more, you know. So I want to talk to, you know, like Ariella Daly, who I had on a few episodes ago to talk about dreams. She's a beekeeper, a natural beekeeper, and her way of keeping bees, which is essential to our ecosystem, and also relating to bees as a way of teaching us wisdom about how to live on the earth. Right. So I'll talk with her. I'll talk with people who are studying and discovering the idea of a circular economy, people doing personal trauma healing, making composting toilets, doing art as activism, all kinds of things, because all of those contribute to the great turning. So the idea is that each one will be a dose of active hope and networking for people and expanding awareness of how much is already being done and awareness of what's possible. So for me, dream work has always been a part of that. For me, practicing natural medicine has always been a part of that. You know, that deeper connection, the well-being that we have to have to contribute, and the self-understanding and all of that is part of us playing a role in the great turning. But I'm expanding beyond that kind of individual self-discovery and healing to all these other conversations.
Wow, that's amazing. That's the first I've heard you really lay it out. So that sounds phenomenal. That's really, really cool.
I'm so excited for you to hear
I look forward to tearing through all of that.
Yeah. Keeping you company on your work day.
Yeah.
Great conversation.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, I think without further ado, we'll take a listen to this amazing episode of the Dreamer's Den podcast, now becoming the turning season. So you can find this episode and other episodes of hers under the turning season, but they will be the Dreamer's Den episodes will be labeled the Dreamer's Den. Well, here we go.
Enjoy.
All right, let's get to the dream work. You're listening to the Dreamer's Den podcast. I'm your host, Leilani Navar. I'm here along with guest dream workers, authors, and teachers to talk about diving deep into your dreams. We're skipping the small talk and going for conversations about what matters most to us, what's touching us so deeply that it shows up in our dreams, in one form or another. We talk about engaging with dreams to experience insight, inspiration, healing, and meaningful connection with one another. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast so you can catch all these conversations. Visit thedreamersden.org/open for a free video and mini book I put together to help you learn more about opening up or deepening your own relationship with your dreams. All right, let's say hello. We'll go around and how about we each say our name and then drop a dream image, some recent dream image into the stew here, and we'll make like a collage of our dream images, one from each of us. So I'm Leilani, and recently I dreamt that I'm in the water at Lake Powell with someone beside me, and I see a huge wave, like a tsunami, way in the distance in Lake Powell. And as it crashes there, it takes a moment for me to realize, oh, we're going to feel that. The movement of that wave is going to get all the way to here. And I watch it come, and then I actually really physically feel in the dream the lift and fall, you know, of when a little wave goes by you. It's like bump, 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 bump.
Wow.
Wow. Oh, man.
Who's next?
I'll go next.
Okay.
I have the perfect antithesis to that.
Okay.
So I've been thinking about, so I knew we were going to share a little bit of our dreams, and I hadn't really had any good complete dreams for a long time that, you know, were coherent enough to share. And then when I woke up this morning, I realized I had, you know, a kind of a funny dream that I really kind of wonder about. So I dreamt that I was just, you know, faced with this dilemma of putting siding on the side of a house. And I knew that there were 3 pieces of siding stacked up there, and I was standing in front of it. That dream ends, right? So I go to, you know, I wake up, do things, go back to sleep, and then I see I just open up with a flash, and my hand is holding a small piece of that same siding. And so that got me curious.
Yeah.
You know? That got me curious. So that's my addition, siding.
That's great. Thank you. And so rare to go right back into,
Yes.
after a full
yes.
waking, into the same
Mhm,
contact. Do you want to say your name too? Or are you going anonymous for this recorded group?
Oh, no. My name's Stephanie.
All right. Thank you, Stephanie, for the siding. Who's next?
I'll go next. I'm Denise. And haven't been catching my dreams a lot lately, but this one showed up a few days ago, and I'm in an office, and I'm leaning over a counter. The office is going to be renovated, and I don't know if I'm there to be involved with the office. I don't really understand why I'm there, but I lean across the counter to this man, and he embraces me, and he sort of pulls me over the counter, and we're in this pool of water together. And I'm not sure what's going on, but he's very, he feels very safe, and he holds me, and we kind of float along together as he's holding me. And periodically our feet touch the bottom of this pool, and it's just very peaceful and relaxing. And it was just this little piece. That was all there was. And that was kind of interesting. I didn't recognize the man, and it was, I woke up and I thought, well, I'm going into something, and somebody's going to be helping me. Somebody's going to be, you know, leading the dance, so to speak. And it felt okay. It was very peaceful.
Nice.
Thank you. Yeah. As I imagine that, it's really quite beautiful to be able to lean in, you know, and be held and feel safe like that.
Yeah.
When the bottom's not always in reach.
Right. And the feeling of floating, you know what I mean, makes it almost a magical kind of thing, you know. That's really a beautiful vision.
I love too how there's a barrier at the beginning, that the office counter that you just does he lift you over?
He kind of lifted me over. It was sort of effortless. I was surprised. And he put his arms around me so that he held my arms in, which is not how you would normally lift someone. But it worked very well. And while we're in the water, he's got me the same way. My arms are contained by him. And in waking life. I'm not sure I would be overly comfortable with that approach. But in the dream, it felt safe. It felt reassuring. It felt okay. And I kind of just went with it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Denise. That's wonderful.
Go ahead, Jenny. We'll do ladies first.
Oh, thank you. I'm Jenny. I can share this is from a couple nights ago. Felt very sweet image also. I'm riding in a convertible with the actor Patrick Stewart, who I love. Real in waking life. So it's a sunny day. We're out in the countryside. I don't know if he's driving or I'm driving, but we are very clearly a couple. We're together. And in the dream, I just feel so much affection for him. And I look over at one point and I'm worried because he's bald and his head is very pale. And I say something to him about we have to be really careful that you don't sunburn your scalp. And then I lean over and I kiss the top of his head very affectionately. And that's really all there was to that fragment, but the feeling in it was just so much affection. I think I also was thinking in the dream about, he's older than me, he's quite a bit older than me, but that's okay. I love him so much. So it was a very, very sweet and affectionate kind of feeling.
I love him too.
It's not to love.
I know.
Oh, thank you, Jenny. I love that, the contact in that dream too, the kiss on the top of the head where the sun is also reaching. Yeah. Thank you.
So here I am. I'm Steve. I guess I'll use a dream that's in my mind kind of related to the one I'm about to share. So essentially, I was in a body of water to go along with everybody else's water. And there were sharks kind of swimming around, but they were cartoonish. So it didn't carry a real scary undertone, but there still was perceptible kind of sense of danger. And I think I'm sinking to the bottom in a way that I'm either getting pulled down or I'm drowning or I'm just so heavy that I just sink. I wish I would have reviewed this dream real quick, but essentially down at the very bottom, when I'm laying at the bottom, I look over and there's I don't know if any of you are familiar with these, but when I was in grade school, they'd have these carts with a TV on it that they would wheel into the classroom whenever you'd have a movie that you'd watch. And that was sitting there with a TV on it and a VCR, and there was a tape about to be pushed into the VCR, and it had something written on it, and I don't remember what it said per se, but there was a notion that what was on the tape would drastically change my whole understanding of who I am. And
wow,
yeah, it was pretty intense. And all of a sudden, right before the dream ended, there was this notion that there were these two people that were causing me to drown or sink or die, essentially. And one was a man, one was a woman. And the woman, I think that's where I got the notion about what was on the tape, because I think she says either to the man or to me, I don't remember how it worked, but that if I were to watch that video, I would hold the knowledge that I needed, that holding that knowledge, I would be rock solid. And it felt very attractive to her that she was finally he's going to be, it was essentially he's going to be a man, he's going to know himself completely in a way that is unshakable. And the feeling I got from the man, who didn't say much, was kind of he was doing this to me, but he was also kind of indifferent whether I lived or died. He was very standoffish. But the woman, at the same time, while she thought that I was going to feel rock solid, all of a sudden her energy felt very slippery, because she was going to abandon her post with that guy and kind of fancied herself to wanting to be with me. It was some kind of weird thing where all of a sudden she felt very ungrounded, whereas I was going to be very solid. So I don't know. It was a very interesting. Yeah. So, anyways.
Wow. That feels like a really
Yeah.
good one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's something I'm definitely unpacking right now for sure. It was, which we'll talk more about with the dream that I'm going to share with you guys here shortly.
Yeah, that was just like his warm up. We got a powerful dream coming too.
Brace
Oh,
yourselves.
man.
Maybe we're about to press
Yeah.
play on the tape and the VCR.
God,
We'll
I hope
see.
so.
Thank you, Steve. That is really rich. I feel like we could spend a lot of time on that
Yeah.
one too. Okay. Wow. Thank you guys. I feel like we have this like rich stew going already with everybody's seasoning in it. That feels really good. I want to shift gears briefly to talk about the style of group dream work we're going to do, also for all the listeners, of what projective dream work is like in a group. And I'll share my screen with all of you on the call. And then for everyone listening, I can also share these visuals through the show notes. But we're going to look at the introduction I like to give to group projective dream work. And it's all based on Jeremy Taylor's DreamWork Toolkit. So, one, all dreams come in the service of health and wholeness. So we're going to share this assumption together, this understanding from the beginning that every dream comes for us. And as Jeremy put it, there's no such thing as a bad dream, only dreams that sometimes take a dramatically negative form in order to grab our attention. So no matter what the dream feels like, and also I'll say not just negative, but mundane, no matter how boring or like a dream that we might just be ready to throw away, there's something in there for us, for our health and wholeness. 2, we're going to go with the belief that only the dreamer can recognize the meanings of their dream. So we might all have helpful insights, but the dreamer is the one who's going to know if that is what this dream really came to say or to open up or to inspire. So usually the dreamer knows this when they get a wordless aha of recognition. And Jeremy was known to talk about that as a function of memory. So on some level, the dreamer already knew what the dream was about. And in the process of dream work, when they get that aha, that's it. It's them remembering, oh, that's what I meant, but it was out of reach until we got back to it. So that aha moment is a felt sense that we each have inside of our own experience. And there's no such thing as a dream with only one meaning. So sometimes we wake up from a dream and we get a sense right away. This dream means I need to check on this person, or this dream means I'm still dealing with my grief, or there's something, pretty obvious to us when we wake up, but that's never the only meaning. There's always more than one. And I would even say most dreams speak in some way on all the levels. They speak about our relationships, our health, our spirituality, our community, our ecosystem. There's some brilliant way that every dream weaves that all together in the imagery and the story that's chosen. So this is one of the reasons that I love, love, love to work dreams in groups, because each of us has our own fluency and our own lens where we're more likely to see the relationship side of it, or the psychological side of it, or the spirituality side, or the health. So when we have all those different perspectives in the room together, we can offer them all to the dreamer and then let them have their aha moments when the right chord is struck. Kind of along those same lines, no dream comes to tell you only what you already know. So even though the dreamer's the only one who knows the true meaning of their dream, most likely they don't consciously know that at first. And this is why we need each other to ask questions and stretch us and offer insights, because we didn't already consciously know everything this dream came to say. And now projections. So wisely and respectfully owning our projections. And this is where this style of dream work, whether it's one-on-one or in a group, really differs from a lot of other styles. And it's mostly in the way we communicate. Like a lot of the things that we might say in the projective dreamwork style, someone would say in any other kind of dreamwork setting, but the way we communicate is really what's distinctive about this. So we're going to fully own the fact that all we can ever do is imagine our own version of the other person's dream. We're never going to know actually what it looked like or felt like in there. And then we can only project on it based on our life experience, our beliefs, our what we're going through at that time, right? So we're always projecting. And even if I listen to Steve's dream and I have a projection on it that's based on imagining that I'm a man, it's still my projection based on imagining that I'm a man. It's not like it's not true for me. It must be true for me in some way or recognizable to me in some way because I'm projecting it. So I'm going to own that by talking in the style of if this were my dream. If this were my dream, I would think, I would ask, I would wonder. The example I like to use is a dream where a man is stuffing the trunk of the car with little coats and little boots at his daughter's car. And so one way someone could sort of interpret that dream, we could say interpret or project on it. And you'll hear people say it in this way, and sometimes it lands fine, but it would be, maybe this means you're still trying to baby your daughter when you should just be letting her move on, right? And maybe the dreamer can hear that and it's true and gives him an aha. But another way to phrase that is, if this were my dream and I were the dad with a daughter about to leave home, I'd think that filling the trunk of her car with little coats and boots is about how I'm trying to take care of her like I used to. And I'd wonder if this takes up space she needs and I should just let her drive away. So if I own that for myself, then the dreamer can really take it or leave it. And usually, in my experience, not feel as triggered or sensitive or defensive about it if it's something kind of heavy and hard for them to look at. We just own it for ourselves, and then the dreamer can take it or leave it.
And it's also for us ourselves. We're showing our deep respect for the dreamer, but we're also giving ourselves this profound practice of compassion, of really practicing, imagining as much as we can what it's like to be in that other person's shoes. And we also, when we phrase things in the first person in this way, get the opportunity to recognize aha moments of our own that we might need. If instead of saying, well, maybe you should call your mother, I say, if this were my dream, I would wonder if it's time I call my mom. Then I get to hear myself say that in my own voice, and maybe I really needed that realization, and that may be why I spotted that aspect of this dream in the first place.
So that's how we'll do this. We'll listen to Steve's dream and we'll imagine it for ourselves. And then when we want to ask him for more about it, we can say, okay, so as I imagine myself standing inside this building, can I tell what time of day it is? Things like that. So he's like helping us fill out our imagined version of his dream. And then we'll share our projections in first person. And I will gently remind us to stay with this approach when needed. So, I'll like tap my chest, or I'll maybe rephrase something in the eye just to keep us grounded in that approach.
I also might hold up a hand or verbally ask for a pause for you to wait. If something is coming up for the dreamer, if there are emotions arising, the dreamer's pace is going to take priority, because while we each are having our own version of this dream and our own insights that apply to us, and things may come up for each of us, I want to really honor the deep work that the dreamer is doing. And when those waves of emotion or deeper processing start happening, they really need room to breathe. And that process itself is so healing. So usually this flows pretty naturally, but I wanted to name that as well, that I might slow us down for a minute if that seems to be something that would really serve the dreamer.
The last thing I usually talk about is anonymity and confidentiality, but you all know we're being recorded and sharing this publicly, so anonymity and confidentiality are not applicable in this case. Anybody have any questions? Okay. All right. So Steve has a dream for us. if you want to read it to us slowly and ideally in present tense, Steve.
And just out of curiosity, I don't remember earlier, does this dream have a title?
I did title it Grief.
Oh, grief. Okay.
All right, so I had this dream April 12th of this year. I am standing in what feels like a school with a father and his son, who is a teenager, and I am also understood to be teenage myself. The father is telling us that we need to be more like them. And he points out to a couple people dressed as Buddhist monks out in the schoolyard. And he relays a notion that if we follow any of the other religions, it's problematic. Like we'd be too much of a handful, almost like him or society wouldn't be able to handle us being anything but perfectly docile and peaceful. So more so quiet. He relays this in a happy way, like he's being our buddy and he thinks he's doing us this great favor, imparting some kind of fatherly advice. And we kind of, the teenage way, go, yeah, sure, thank you. Thinking that, yeah, sure, I mean, we don't know anything better, so we just kind of eat it up and take it as it is. And then the scene moves into the schoolyard, and one of the head teachers, an older woman, is calling for all of the children to join her in a designated area. And suddenly, every child that is in the dream is not teenage. They're probably between the ages of 3, 4, 5, 6, somewhere around there. And as she's trying to corral all the kids in, there is a child who comes hurtling around in somewhat of a mischievous way. He looks gothy, like he has black hair and black clothes and a little bit almost like eyeshadow on. And it feels very much like a shadow child. And I wish I could remember verbatim what the woman says to him, but she shouts at him in a tired tone, saying, "So-and-so, you are our biggest failure," or something to that tune, where it felt like the child was somehow like beyond repair. And the way she says it and the wording she used makes me kind of go like this, like, whoa, lady, like that seems very harsh. And she finally gets everybody together and she asks the kids a series of questions about an emotional issue that it seems like the whole school had collectively just kind of gone through. And she's kind of like slowly and easily through her questioning, almost like leading questions, to bring them to this place of awareness that the great conclusion of what they've been dealing with, that there's this grief at the heart of it, and that everybody needs to kind of tap that grief for us to all kind of move through it. And that's how the dream ended, with that feeling of like the weight of the necessity of tapping into whatever that is.
Mm.
And if I could just say one thing about this, since January, I've had like a slew of dreams with the child archetype suddenly like surfacing in like a very strong way. And so there's this one in the dream that I had just shared at the beginning, the TV on the stand that's related to being in school, the sharks that look like they're from a Disney movie. Kind of, there was a few themes that seem to tie into the child archetype and the knowledge that I need to have to become a man. And it feels like whatever that tape has on it is also related to whatever this grief is that needs to be felt and recognized fully, so that I can become a man or know myself more fully. So,
Mhm. All right.
but I have no idea. I'm still trying to piece it apart. So I'm
Okay.
happy to share this with you guys.
Yeah, let's do it. Thank you for sharing this. I'm glad we got the tape dream beforehand too.
Yeah. So the tape dream was after this one.
Okay.
So it was like a continuation, like trying to push that button a little bit.
So in the beginning of the dream, I'm a teenager and I'm with the son who's also a teenager. And then later there's all these younger kids. Is there a sense of whether I am still a teenager? Am I still really in the scene? What's happening there?
When I was trying to piece apart that part, it felt like that fatherly wisdom was trying to speak to like a way I was raised. I mean, I was pretty strong-willed kid. So I have a feeling that my parents had to really kind of come down on me pretty hard to get me to cooperate and to, you know, fall in line a little bit. And my father was definitely a very strong and hard-edged character at times. So I could see this notion being kind of like, you know, you have to be like the Buddhist monk or I can't handle you. You have to be completely peaceful and quiet, and or me and society is not going to be able to handle you. They're not going to know what to do with you. And so I don't know if that's like some kind of narrative that has wormed its way into me, and I'm guessing in there's some reason why that's like so potently visible. And if that is the case, that seems like to move into smaller children, maybe that was where that got instilled or something. And now I'm a teenage kid and I'm just kind of like, oh yeah, sure.
Uh-huh. And does it feel
it's
like
become such a part of my life that I don't know any better. And that's the part that I woke up and was like, you know, thinking on that fatherly advice, being a father myself. I'm like, that's such BS. Like to tell a child that no, you can't be yourself because I can't handle you. That's
even if it's true sometimes.
yeah, right. Yeah.
So in the dream, you know, I'm in a school. Do I recognize anybody from waking life? I'm trying to get just a clear picture of not so much the feelings, but the images in the dream, what they look like. So I can sort of paint my own dream here.
Right. No, I don't know anybody from waking life in the dream. It's all just random people, even the father and the kid and the teenage son.
Okay.
The school itself is not a school that I have ever attended either. So
What am I? Do I know what room I'm in the school?
oh, that's
Am I in the?
yeah. It's kind of a wow. Thank you for that. Oh my god. I think I just had a somewhat of a ping. So where I'm standing with the father and the teenage son, it was kind of like this open aired hallway in between classrooms. And
Okay.
so essentially the whole dream takes place outside, but that part in particular is kind of like in an overhang like hallway of some sort. And when I was a kid in Florida, I lived there for a couple of years. That's essentially how the schools were formulated down there. You have just trailers for the classrooms in the elementary school, and they were all conjoined by these cement hallways that were all outside with these overhanging kind of things. So that would have been when I was from the age of 7 to 11. I lived in Florida and went to that school. So I don't know if that's connecting me to that time period at all.
Mm.
And how are the people dressed? I mean, how is the teacher? The father and the teenage son and myself. And then later when the little children come in and the woman, how's everybody dressed? Are we in uniforms? Are we in shorts? Are we,
Yeah, it's just casual. Nothing stood out. The older woman was kind of she felt very much like an old taskmaster. She was probably dressed a little bit more formally, and was tall and skinny and had just this presence of being the kind of old woman who used to hit children when that was allowed. She was very stern.
Okay. And do you have any sense, do I, as the dreamer, have any sense of maybe how old she is, her age?
She would have been, I mean, she felt to me in the dream like she was at least like 70, I would think. She felt quite old, and sorry if anybody's 70. I just said that to you. When I think about it right now, it almost feels like that perception you have when you're a child of like how much older people are than you. That is pretty skewed.
Okay.
So yeah.
Mhm.
It feels like there's the interesting thing to me is sort of these transitional pieces of there's elements of transition in the dream that stand out. I'm thinking about how I'm in this in between place. It's between classrooms. It's sort of indoor, sort of outdoor. I think that's a really interesting environment and setting. And I also think about how I'm a teenager, and that really is a transitional, I mean, that's a hugely transitional period as well. You know, I'm not a little kid anymore, but I'm also not an adult. So I think that's an interesting theme in there about kind of the transitional quality. And I'm curious about how I'm feeling about this woman too. You know, I'm taken aback by how harsh she is with the little goth child, but how do I feel about what she says about grief? How am I reacting to that part of what she's instructing them in?
Wow, thank you for that. I'm glad you said that, because I don't think I really paid too much attention to this. But so when she's ragging on the child, she feels very mean and, you know, stern, and kind of like she's been past her point with this child and she just can't even take it anymore. And but when she moves everybody into the other space and she's like walking us through this process of, you know, opening up to this grief, she's very soft, and she's very I almost believe I remember her being kind of choked up when she arrives at, you know, delivering that conclusion to us all, that there's grief at the heart of it. She feels like an elder who is like delivering the information that'll kind of save us in a sense. And she's very emotional about it and very sensitive about helping us all get there. So
Interesting. That feels, if it were my dream, I would think about like that, because I interpret everything this way for myself, like that divine feminine energy, which can be so incredibly compassionate and just open-hearted and generous, but can also like turn on a dime and be like just the taskmaster and decisive and cutting things off and like no, you know, pointing things out and being incredibly harsh. I feel like there's you know, there's that many faces to the sort of feminine energy, and it sounds like this woman really embodied a lot of those kind of in a short space of time, which I think is an interesting thing. And also her corralling of these little children too, I think just that's a really interesting image, kind of bringing in these little people and then also kind of trying to instruct them in something that's very emotional. And, you know, like that's a really hard thing for children to get their heads
Yeah.
around. So some interesting dynamics in there.
Yeah, and it almost, that we're pulling this apart, it almost feels like, as a kid, you interpret things differently than how maybe the adult expects you to internalize it. And so my initial reaction to the teacher kind of chastising that child, it might be helping me to look at, sometimes children need discipline and they need structure and they need accountability and, to grow. And maybe maybe the child of me has misinterpreted some of those big growth moments that I had in life, and that really they meant well, but I internalized it as if I was beyond repair.
Yeah. So I'm seeing that. I'm seeing how that harsh message came across to the shadow child, but I'm also seeing now that I can be compassionate and I can name it and I can call it grief. I can recognize that there's some grief attached to that. Just within that same moment. Yeah, I feel like something about being able to give it a name and tie it to the whole picture seems kind of meaningful. Like this is, I thought this was about being judged harshly, but really what it's about maybe is grief and kind of allowing some compassion for myself to grieve. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I'm struck by in this dream is the voice of the father giving me, a particular message about being like a Buddhist monk, docile and peaceful. And I think about that and I think Buddhist monks they're a lot of things. There's a lot more to them than docile and peaceful. In my experience, they're very focused, very dedicated, and deeply, profoundly compassionate. And in the second part of the dream, the woman is talking to me, us, the goth child, and starts out being somewhat harsh, and then talks more in my dream in a compassionate way. And so I'm struck by both the sort of masculine and feminine energies talking to the children, me. And if I think about all the pieces of the dream being pieces of myself, I wonder where I'm kind of authoritarian with myself. I'm kind of strict with myself. I'm kind of dictatorial with myself. And I'm struck by the fact that at the end of this dream, there's a different energy, sort of to tap into what Jenny said, the divine feminine. There's this feminine female person who is being very tender and caring and compassionate and attentive, in a way in which it feels to me like she's actually really trying to connect in an intimate and maternalish even way. And for me, I think about this dream and I wonder, in my dream, is this part of me trying to reach me? Is this my good mother self, who's a little bit clumsy at first, she's a little bit harsh at first, but in her deepest soul, this part of me is trying to be compassionate towards this gothy child and other child parts of me. I like that idea. For me, I like being attended to by someone who's really doing their best to try to show compassion and care and empathy. And in my dream, I recognize this and am able to take it in. And for me, it gives me a kind of a hope and reassurance that, this might actually be possible for me to do with myself.
I love that. Thank you. I really like that a lot. I really liked what you said about Buddhist monks and how they're focused and deeply compassionate. And so even though upon awakening, my first thought was, wow, guy, there is value in that still. And, if you're going to become a man, you can't be a wild child all the time. And so I think, I think there's probably like a lot to that, both in like, I don't know, it feels like that the paradoxical kind of way that parenthood is. It's like, I don't know, when I became a parent myself, I understood so many things about how my parents tried to raise me that I didn't understand or couldn't understand or couldn't see what the value in it was. And maybe this is the same kind of thing where at first it seems like, wow, thanks for like looking out for yourself and not seeing me in the equation at all, or just trying to make me be what you want me to be, versus there still being, maybe that is still true, maybe at an unconscious level that is why the father is saying that, but at the same sense, he thinks he's offering me value, and there is some, in hindsight, it's easy to see the value more, I guess, being a parent now and understanding how fallible I am at it, and seeing how often I get it way wrong. And so
nothing teaches you more about what your parents did than being a parent.
I know.
Yeah.
And you have to encompass everything. I mean, and I if it were my dream, I would think about like it's saying be compassionate to yourself, because you've got those two parent figures in the dream, or I have those two parent figures in the dream that are showing up in a lot of different ways, and that really is the experience of parenting.
Yeah.
You have to be super compassionate, but you also have to be really instructive, and you also have to know where to have boundaries, and you have to kind of gather things in. I mean, in the dream, those two figures are doing a lot of that, but it feels like kind of underneath that is that message of compassion, because parenting is like, it's the hardest thing. And unless one can forgive oneself for all of those mistakes, it's a really hard road.
Mm-hmm.
It is really hard.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, and I really liked what you said, Denise, about the woman, and how you like that it ends on that note of connecting with the heart of that motherly goodness. It is very hopeful, and that's how it left me too. It was just like,
well,
it was one of those dreams that just like leaves its mark on you, and you wake up kind of like gasping almost, where it was like, whew, okay. I just got chills right now thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think about what Jeremy used to say, which is that dreams don't come to torture us. They come to help us. And if we have a dream, and then we remember it, we've already sort of taken the first step. We've already moved in that direction. And for me, I think about this dream for myself, and I think about, it's giving me some new ways to look at things that I hadn't seen before. And it's reminding me, because of all these different elements in the dream, the kid, the goth kid, the father, myself as a teenager, the woman, that all of these energies are alive and very, very invaluable to me. The goth child is valuable. These little kids are valuable. The father, the teenage son, the woman, they're all valuable energies for me to bring alive into my life. And my quest that this dream presents me with is, how do I integrate all of these energies into where I'm trying to go and who I'm trying to be? Because each of these energies brings something that's really important, or they wouldn't have shown up in my dream. And I think about, Jeremy used to always say, it's never really either or, it's and.
Nice. Thank you.
I would love to hear.
Sorry.
Well, I'll throw this out there and it can weave in if you want to. And then, but I would love to hear more about the goth child and what being goth is. Like, if I didn't know that word, you know, what does it mean to dress in that way as the dreamer? Is that a way I ever dressed or wanted to dress, or did I have relationships with people who dressed that way? Like, I want to know more about who this child is that runs out with mischief in his eye and gets dealt with so harshly. Yeah.
I didn't dress the way that the child was dressed. I mean, I guess I said gothy just because the dream tried to make it very clear that it was more of the shadow expression of the child. And so it looked a little bit more like torture. I don't know what to say, but
emo.
Yeah, emo, exactly. Just very like black hair, jet black hair, black clothes, maybe a little bit of eyeliner. I don't know if there was eyeliner, but there was that kind of look. Yeah, when I was in high school, though, I dressed very true to hip hop culture. So I had very baggy clothes and shaved my head and wore hoodies that were about 5 sizes too big for me. And I have a lot of, I guess, I don't know, we moved to a very white town right around that time, and I had lived in a couple of very big cities, and it just was whatever, you know. So moving to that small, very white town, I came under a lot of hard like criticism and bullying, and actually like a lot of racial stuff was thrown at me because I was looked at as like some kind of like race traitor, or like there was a lot, I'm not even gonna say them, there was just a lot of like really awful racial slurs thrown at me. And so, and being a hip hop artist, that's what I outside of the podcast, I create music, and it's changing right now. It's becoming a lot of like singer-songwriter kind of stuff in the mix of hip hop, but hip hop has always been my big love. And so I don't know if the two would relate at all in that capacity, but I did have a streak of being very thinking I was a little tough guy.
So in the small white town where dressing in this more hip hop style that didn't, raise so many eyebrows in the bigger cities, like, were there kids dressing in a goth way? Was that something that was more?
Yeah, I think that was more typical.
Yeah.
At the school, yeah. Because that was like when emo music like really took off, and so yeah, there was a lot of that.
So if this were my dream, there might be something there about like to emo and goth and jet black hair and black clothes and all of that. Part of it, I think, the word tortured came out there too. So it's like wearing that angst on the surface. Look at me, I'm angsty. Like see
Yes.
my angst is all over that. And hip hop culture has a lot of boldness in it too, like a lot of see me in it too. And I mean, this is all my projection, but to me, this is like another side of what am I going through on the inside that everybody else has no idea about. But in this mode of expression that I, as the dreamer, did not choose, and that maybe is newly surfacing in me and showing up to encounter almost that judgmental energy that the old woman has.
Interesting. Yeah, and I guess during my like very hard hip hop phase, I was going through a depression, so I was very much trying to put on that front of being hard or being angry and being just kind of unapproachable in that way of creating that experience of like, don't mess with me. I'm not to be messed with, and I'm not to be talked to, and blah 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 blah. So when you were saying that, I could definitely see a little bit of that same thing with that child, where it was kind of like, because he was kind of running around I wrote hurtling around, and it was almost like he was like trying to like get in the face of everyone and like messing with people, and trying to just create a problem to be a problem, almost to like, wow, almost to kind of like reinforce his stance, or like his whole belief system of maybe that he does feel like he's this failure that nobody wants to take the time to understand, and to what was the other way I framed that?
To repair.
Yes, beyond repair. Just kind of
That feels a little like almost like a trickster kind of energy, kind of probing into that child a little bit more. He's running around outside. He's outside of the circle of kids. He's got that look in his eye. I mean, I was thinking about just what you were saying about the experience of being a teenager. That way of dressing, whether it's the hip hop thing or the goth thing, it is a see me thing, but it's almost more like I'm going to dress this way so that I don't fit in. It's a very intentional way of standing apart, and putting things in the it's a very two-sided thing, because it is alienating, but also like, I did this deliberately. I'm dressing this way because I want to stand out, and I want it to be in your face that I don't fit in. That seems, it's a complicated dynamic, because I think we all want to fit in. We all want to belong in some way, but we also want to be kind of individual and unique and express ourselves. So it's kind of a fraught dynamic. And it is interesting that he gets called out immediately. But the dream self really like puzzled by that a little bit, like, wow, that was unnecessarily harsh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, now that I'm thinking about that too, is like during that time of that phase of mine, all of my teachers seemed like they were just coming down on me unnecessarily hard. And I remember I had this one very sweet teacher who kind of saw that, and she tried to take me under her wing as best she could. And she used to tell me all the time, Steve, you really got, at some point in your life, you're going to have to learn when and how to choose your battles. Like, you can't just you can't try to fight everything that life throws at you. And that finally clicked in like a few years later. But yeah, I've just felt like I was mad at the world. I felt like I was just raging against everyone and everything, and just so angry. I mean, because I guess part of what fueled all of that was that I moved a lot when I was a kid. Like before I got to middle school, I had lived in 5 states. And so growing up as a young kid, there is a lot of grief that I probably haven't really touched on, and that I didn't have time to because I had to survive. And wow, I'm getting really emotional all of a sudden. And yeah, so once I got to that school, and it seemed like everybody wrote me off as like this person that doesn't fit, that doesn't jive with their little white centric bubble that they were all in. I just got so angry and so mad that, I'd been through so much, and it just finally all kind of snowballed into a big nasty mess. And yeah, the teachers, they didn't seem to understand, and it was like so many of them would just like rag on me or dog on me, or there was like a rule that I couldn't wear a hat or headphones in the hallway, and I didn't want to have to hear anybody in the hall, so I would constantly wear them like an idiot. And so of course I'd get yelled at all the time, and it was kind of like what I just said a few moments ago, where I was just like doing things to be a problem just to reinforce almost like my angst. And I don't know, it is fraud. It's like it's just like that's such a bad way about going about it. And but it's such like a teenage thing, I think, to I don't know, to rage against the systems in place. And I feel like at that time, in many ways, I have a lot of Aquarius in my astrology birth chart, and I think I was becoming more individualized, and I was trying to find my own identity. And being so angry and depressed and angsty, the greatest way that I could express that was through going full on in hip hop culture and dress, and basically putting a big middle finger up to everyone and anyone. And yeah.
Well, I have to say this because it comes up when I hear this. I'm thinking about the dream as, for me, I'm thinking about my dream as an invitation. The last thing that this teacher, this woman says, is she's trying to get us children. She's trying to get us to address our grief. In my dream, when I think about goth kid, angry, rage, what's usually underneath rage a lot of times for me, if I sit with the rage, what's underneath it is grief. And I'm struck by the fact that she's inviting me to explore this, to explore some grief that needs to be tapped into. She even sort of says, this grief that needs to be tapped into. And, dreams come in the service of health and wholeness, and they don't come to tell us something we already know. And even though I may know, I'm putting air quotes here, oh yeah, I've got some grief that needs to be looked into, there's some piece of this dream that's asking me to look really deep. And I'm kind of struggling with that in my dream. I'm really kind of struggling with that.
Yeah, I like that. That's absolutely. I mean, having this conversation right now, I feel like I've, for the last few minutes, been on the edge of full on crying.
Yeah.
Like I just feel like we're tiptoeing right to the precipice of that whole reservoir. And yeah, I like what you said, because I mean, I've been doing a lot of grief work and shadow work the last, 5, 6, 7 years, and there's been a lot of grief that I've tapped into, but I don't think I've really tapped into this part of it. And I'm guessing that's why the dream's here. It's like inviting me into that space and this part of it. And yeah.
I want to just recognize and make space for that. There's the grief is coming up right now, and we don't need to go there at this exact moment, but I want to like make a big opening around that and know that maybe that's something after our call or something that really needs room, because of anything else that we might say, that might be the biggest, most important thing coming from this dream, waking up from it and having chills, and just the word, the title of the dream, and the woman saying grief, like, maybe that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
I am feeling drawn to go back to the Buddhist monks in light of that too, because like I love what Denise said, they have focus and a discipline. There's so much meditation in their lives and in their years past. I also recognize them by how they're dressed. So that seems interesting, the monks. But like the Buddhist practice involves cultivating mindfulness and cultivating compassion. Those are important practices. And so maybe as the teenage guy, I don't get what my dad is saying when he says, be like that. I'm like, no, screw that. I'm not going to be docile and quiet. But maybe what he's saying is be like that. Have a practice, get to know your mind, cultivate compassion. And maybe that would really, really serve me right now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, when I found meditation, that really was like what really saved my life and felt like I was missing all along. And 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 yeah, it just makes that whole part so much more meaningful. Now all of a sudden, I guess I hadn't even really thought about that I did end up being like that. Oh boy, it's maybe the little boy wasn't beyond repair. I just needed the practices. I just needed the knowledge of how to do that and how to, sit with my grief and to work through all of that pain that I went through when I was a kid. Wow, I didn't expect to actually tap that today. This is amazing. Thank you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing it. Amazing.
Steve, mindful of the fact that we're here with the group and recording and seeing what you're opening up here, do you want to, this is when we would be, bringing the conversation to a close, although there's always more we could do with the dream. This is when we would close. Do you want to stay on the call and close as a group? Do you want to go exit the call and have your own space right now? Or
oh no, okay. I feel okay. I can I can wrap it out. Thank you though.
Okay. All right. So as we close this out, is there anything anyone wants to share? Any last reflections about this dream and what it's bringing up for you? And then Steve, if you have anything you want to say about the dream at the end. It'll come back around to you for the final words.
I just wanted to say that, in thinking about your dream, being in your dream, the thing that was striking me was the male and the female figures, and how the female figure turned, from harsh to soft. And she had different sides to her. You know what I mean? It's like, it seems like the adult figures sort of morph. That's really a powerful thing to realize is true. Disappointing, but true. And, it's like, how flawed we are, how flawed as parents we are, how, we're not just, one way or the other, and we're just so multifaceted. And, it's you can see the progression, you can see where it came from. You can learn what you can learn, and you can forgive, yourself and others. That's what I was thinking about when I saw that vision of the two parents for me.
Thank you, Stephanie. Everybody else feeling complete? All right, I'll share final thoughts. One thing I noticed in my imagined version of this dream is the embodied piece of it, the gestures, the nodding along as a teenager, listening to the dad, kind of, oh, yeah, nodding along, and then the cocking of the head to one side when the woman is so harsh, and I'm thinking, whoa, lady, and just noticing those two different gestures. Some shift happens there in the way that I'm taking things in the way that I'm listening to and responding to the authority figures or the parental figures. And I would want to watch for that in waking life. Like, are there times when I make those gestures or take that posture? And is there anything for me to notice there? And the other thing is about the 5-element lens through this. I'm seeing metal energy show up in a beautiful way. Imagining, myself as the dreamer, and I make music and I use my voice. That's a expression of metal qualities, the radiance of sound and of music and the voice itself, the speaking. And then grief is the emotion of metal, of the lungs and large intestine. Also, it's the element of the season of fall. So we have this woman who's older, who's in the autumn of her life. And that fall season and that metal quality of discernment, of saying yes or no to things, of letting things go, can also really become judgmentalness. So I see in her that judgmentalness, but it's the same energy. It's the same qualities in me that are judgmental, that also, once that's out, once that softens, make room for grief. That's also the qualities that notice and process the grief. Those are the last things I wanted to share. Do you have anything you'd like to say, Steve?
Yeah, I guess just gratitude to all of you for all your amazing projections and helping me to really feel like I tapped into that pretty hard. And now after this, I think I'll be able to move into those spaces a little deeper and to look at those a little bit more clearly now. And so thank you. And that I was not expecting all of this. So but I'm glad, because the dreams have been pushing at me to figure it out. So I hope that I can keep finding my way into there.
Thank you for opening up the dream and everything else with us. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you all. Thanks everybody for your listening and questions and projections. And as a close, I'd love to go back around the circle, and if each person wants to share one thing from today that's going to stay with you, an image or an insight that you'll carry forward. Could be from Steve's dream and our process with that, or from one of the dreams shared at the beginning. For me, it's looking out at the Buddhist monks from the covered walkway between the trailers, looking out at them and considering being like that.
I think for me, it's sort of recognizing this in the dream that I heard that became mine from Steve, recognizing that this path is being held in the loving arms of the Good Mother, the divine feminine, and remembering that she has deep and profound love for me.
Yeah. Amen to that. I love it so much. And I think the image that's going to stay with me, I can see it being deep in the water and knowing that when I die, I'm going to get to see what's on that tape. See that, I can see that machine, the AV cart. I can see it so clearly, and just like, if I can just get to it, I'll know. I love that image. So thank you so much for sharing that and for everything else.
I just want to thank Steve for sharing. And so, really, let it wash in, because I just feel like I witnessed a miracle. And it's such a gift for me, it's such a gift to see that, you don't witness deep expression and deep, movement on those deeper levels every day. You don't go deep like every day, at least I don't.
With three people you don't know.
I just, yeah, I know. That's what I mean. That's what I mean. It's a miracle. It's like, wow, really, really memorable. So thank you. Thank everybody. Thank you for letting me be a part of this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Well, I think on that note, I think that what I could say is I really appreciate the way that dreams do this, that they take, I mean, I know Leilani relatively well, not super well, but I don't know any of you. And for something like a dream to be able to move complete strangers into such a deep and vulnerable and beautiful place, I think is such a testament to just how incredibly powerful and beautiful and healing and just magical they really can be. Yeah.
Indeed. Thank you all. Thank you for coming into this space with me as always, and especially for coming in and being recorded today so we can share this dream group session. I really appreciate each of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leilani.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So here we are back. This is Steve and Leilani once again. I hope you guys really enjoyed that episode of hers, and hope that you check out more of hers and more of what she's got coming up here real soon under the turning season. So yeah, I just wanted to have a conversation with Leilani about this, because we haven't really talked too specifically about this whole experience that happened for me since it happened. And I think what Denise says at one point during that episode, where she says, or I say to her, I'm sure there's a lot of grief that I never really processed well when I was a kid from all the moving I did. And she said something like, there's a difference between knowing that you have grief inside of you versus really touching base with it. And that's exactly like what this whole experience did for me. It really brought me back into complete touch with that place within me that, through the process of being a kid and moving and having, to shift gears so, I don't know, violently is the right word, but so intensely. And I mean, to constantly have to do that. I mean, by the time I was 12, I'd moved 5 different times. And like, as soon as I would establish a friend group and things would feel good, then the map would come back out and my parents would show us where we were going next. And so it became like this survival mode kind of way of life. And yeah, I really, I mean, I did grieve a lot of it a lot when I was a kid, but I still, it's still an open wound for me. I know that. And so that, like, it felt like such like a great return back to that space. And it almost felt like a lot of the shadow work that I've been doing has been preparing me to come back to that space. Because in the dream with the VCR underwater, you kind of see this telling that, you know, for him to know this, for him to go back to this place, to feel this, to recognize that this is where his deepest wounding lies, is what allows him to become a man, because now he's finally on top of, you know, this chasm within him that has been this deep source of pain for his whole life. And for me to finally like square up with that and recognize that and to really feel into that in a like a really powerful way, and to see that and to know how far I've come with it at the same time. With, I mean, the thing that breaks me in the episode is when you make me realize that I did become like that, like them.
Yeah.
And that like just broke all of the armor and made me realize that I could go in there and I could feel it, and that I am better, and that I have the skills that I need to be able to sit with it like everybody does at the end of the episode, and that I could finally go back into that space now that I know how to be in that space and to love myself there, and that I don't need to keep it at arm's length anymore, and that I'm in the right space now to be able to go there for myself. And so that was like so incredibly powerful and so beautiful. And I had quite a few moments after that whole conversation where I was able to lean in even deeper and just had like this really beautiful moment of being able to be like, I'm sorry all of that happened to you. And I love you and I'm here for you all. Just, I'm here now. You know, I'm not going to leave you there to suffer any longer. And we're going to sit with this, and we're going to work through this. And I'm 100% here in your corner, and we're going to work through it. We're going to do whatever we got to do to find our way through.
Wow.
And it was just like so beautiful. And the other dream that I had that seemed to be pointing at this too was I had a dream where my mother said, she comes up to me in the dream, and I'm holding a notebook, and I hadn't even really realized I was holding it until she mentioned it. And she's like, I'm sure you have a lot of really great songs in that notebook. And all of a sudden I look down and I realize I have it in my hand, and I'm like, wow, okay. Yeah, this must be a song notebook. This must be my lyric book or whatever. And so we flipped through it, and it's not a songbook, it's like a sketchbook. And there's these amazing drawings in it that are like real tailored to like a film noir, like black and white, very stylized, very very intensely detailed, almost like a comic book. And in the picture, there's a man in a tall, like cylindrical water tank, and he's unconscious. And there's a scorpion floating in the water beneath him that's also unconscious. And I realized that the person in the tank is me.
Wow.
And all of a sudden we realized that also in the picture there's this row of security guards, and they're very intense, standing shoulder to shoulder, and they just have this very intense look in their eyes. And my mom says something about it, and I say to her, yeah, well, they all possess the knowing. And we both kind of stepped back and we're like, what do they know? And it was almost like they were guardians of the knowing, and that once me and the tank wake up, I would possess it.
Wow.
Yeah. And so then we just stand back and we're looking at the images, and my gaze, the dream ends with my gaze on me and the tank with the scorpion. And it's just kind of like this dun 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 dun, like to be continued feel.
Yeah.
And and so the really crazy thing about this dream was, I mean, the reason why it feels connected to the other two dreams is it kind of carried the same echo as the videotape,
Yeah.
where it was like there was this knowing
Mm-hmm.
that was trying to be known. And in the tank, I'm unconscious, so it seems like I'm very unconscious to this thing. And if I awaken, it felt like the scorpion also awakens,
Mm-hmm.
and that it could sting me, it could hurt, but at the same time, the sting also feels like that, kind of like what that realization did to me in the episode, where it really, it brought me right into it. It really, I mean, the sting in it in a way was like that pain coming full force and really recognizing it in full. And at the same time, when I think of that imagery, it also, the idea of like it allowing me to become a man, it feels almost electric, like the sting brings me back to life.
Mm-hmm.
And allows me to kind of, I mean, the scorpion is, especially astrologically, is very tied to like transformation and real deep, unconscious, shadowy kind of stuff. And so it feels like that transformative kind of sting, like electrifies me back to life as a man who like understands himself in a way that, allows him to become the man he's meant to be.
Yeah. Yeah, and for me, if these were my dreams, there's also that connection of the sharks in the water that are a little bit cartoonish, so they're not quite so dangerous, and the scorpion who's in the water who's unconscious, so not quite so dangerous, and a connection between the security guards and the woman, the teacher who scolds the little boy and then becomes the one who can help the children tend to the grief. There's something about, I think I mentioned when we were in Dream Group, how I felt like there was a lot of metal energy in her. And that also, again, that element is protection and guarding. And so these guards of the knowing have some of that too.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's actually like really cool. I appreciate those reflections. Yeah, I mean, I totally see that.
Well, thank you for sharing that dream. I feel like this happens a lot, and it's always so intriguing. I want to dive into this dream now with you for like an hour, but how the dreams continue the conversation, the videotape dream, and then the dream of the little boy beyond repair, and now this dream, and we spent time as a group diving into those dreams, and you spent time with them and really with the grief and with the part of yourself that needed to be seen and held and supported in that grief. And now the dreams are continuing the conversation. The other thing that felt connected to me was the sketchbook, like kind of like watching a video. I'm looking at the illustrations. I'm somehow, viewing this a little bit removed. I'm not in it anymore. I'm viewing the record of it. So I feel sure that the story is progressing somehow. Now the entry of the mother and the presence of the security guards, things are shifting and it's continuing. And I just love getting to glimpse the journey that you're on, the process that you're on, and hearing the way you spoke about the grief and what you've been going through since the Dream Group is really beautiful to me. So thank you for that. And thank you for your incredible openness in the Dream Group. I know I've said that, but as much as I may have done to hold the space, you brought your openness to it. And I'm so grateful.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate you saying that. I mean, we've kind of talked about this before, but I am definitely a very open book. And and I mean, I have been doing shadow work since 2012, so I better be able to go into a dream group and just bare my whole soul at this point. It's been a really incredible process since we had that dream work session, because it really does feel like so many things have just clicked into awareness that it's almost been like kind of like a culmination of quite a few things all at once. Like the father wound episode that we just did, that feels powerful. I mean, even like the scorpion in the tank feels like the sting there is, a little bit reminiscent of that whole story. The other thing I did want to mention to you was that the sketchbook felt very, very important, because it was almost like, okay, so in the sketchbook, which was supposed to be a songbook, and so the mashup of those images told me that the knowing was intricately woven through the songs without my true awareness of the underlying process that these dreams have been trying to facilitate this kind of growth in me. And so I've written 21 songs over the last 3 years for what is now 2 albums, but what I thought was going to be just 1 album. This dream made me realize that an underlying theme underneath a majority of the songs was everything that I tapped in that dream working session with you. Like that was the knowing that was trying to come through. And when I listen to a handful of those songs now, because actually the way that I split the album was that I took all the songs that felt like they were connected to the knowing, or at least like fit the bill with that. It's just amazing. Like after I had that experience with you, I went back and I listened to all these songs, and I was just like baffled, just blown away that like I knew that the songs were powerful and I knew that they were incredibly meaningful and deeply personal, but to listen to them through that lens, like to know that the me behind the songs that were writing them was that space. And like I just got an incredible amount of chills that just went right through my body right now. Um, yeah, and it's phenomenal. So to think about the fact that the whole time that the dreams have been inspiring music for me, it to me in many ways I was just like, oh yeah, because they want me to do this. They want me to be the musician that I've always been meant to be, and to write songs at the depth that I've always wanted to write, always felt like was something that wanted to be expressed. But after I really understood this dream, I realized, well, the dreams were, yeah, they were doing that, obviously, but at the same time, they were working the heck out of you. Like, you were doing dream work, like creative dream work through writing these songs. Like, they were working you, tapping you into something deeper. And the whole string of the songs that they were trying to get you to write are these songs that are so tailored and beautiful to that part of me. And I'm going to play one or two of them at the end of this episode for you to get an idea of what that even looks like. So yeah, that was another big thing that I really wanted to tell you about, was that how exciting this new album is in light of having this DreamWorks session with you. It's just like unbelievable. So yeah, so thank you.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Yeah, I can't wait to hear all your new dream inspired songs, and how cool that you consciously recognize something that's been there for a really, really long time. How we can know something on some level, but then reach a point where we really know it, and all the former knowings fall into place.
Yeah, it's been such a wild ride. I mean, way too much to say right now for sure. Yeah. So to end this real quick, I just wanted to say thank you one last time for inviting me to be a part of that group. And I mean, feeling intuitively that my dream was the one that should be used. I mean, it didn't have to be, and that could have been a fine experience for me, but it wouldn't have been that experience for me. So thank you deeply, because I mean, this was such a big moment for me. And I don't know if I would have necessarily gotten there. I mean, I'm sure I would have in some way, but it meant so much more to be in the company of all of you women, because I mean, I felt so held and so taken care of by all of you. So I really wanted to thank you personally for that experience and for hosting and for having me on and being such an amazing guide. And also to all the women that were there. So Jenny, Stephanie, Denise, and you, I guess. So thank you to all you ladies, and especially you, Leilani. And yeah, I look forward to sitting in a group with you again sometime soon.
Thank you for having me on The Dreams That Shape Us, talking to me so in depth about my dreams and sharing this episode of The Dreamer's Den, and for everything you guys are doing here, the stories you share and the way that you share them.
I appreciate that. And I know Jason does too. I mean, this is a serious passion project for the two of us. So we're so grateful that people love it and that they're really engaged with it, and that they're itching for the next episode to come out. It really means a lot to us that so many of you are so touched and so totally on board with what we're doing here. So I'm going to play you one song that's on the upcoming album, which I'm entitling The Knowing, due to this dream. This song is called Here I Am, and it really is so perfect for everything that you just heard. So thank you, and I really hope you enjoy it.
My life has been hard, and I'm just trying to tell it from my heart. And I've come far, but my scars, they tell the truth. A constant victim of verbal and emotional abuse, and every time they come around, they would knock me to the ground, and I just freeze, and it wouldn't make a sound, though the pain inside my soul was screaming so loud. And I just eat it and feel defeated in my anger. Yeah, I would bottle it and wallow and then turn hollow, kid, from all of it. And what's worse, my complete lack of self-worth, and the strength to stand up to those jerks, and to sit with all of my hurt, cause I divided side of my soul, and I'm surprised I ever survived that black hole. People wouldn't help me, they just tell me I'm being dramatic. But looking back on that time, there's no doubt in my mind that shit was traumatic. And rightfully so, man, my life's been one big fight for my soul, and I'll be damned if I don't reclaim the life that they stole, man. And I know I ain't in this fight all alone, man. I still hope and dream for tomorrow, and I'm so stuck on yesterday. But this spark inside has kept me alive, and I won't let it fade away. This world's been unaccepting of who I am, and it's broken my heart in other ways it can. Here I am, here I am, and I may be a broken-hearted martyr of a man. Here I am, here I am, and I will no longer allow this world to tell me who I am. My life has been hard, and I'm just trying to heal my bleeding heart, and I've come far, but there's still so much to heal, and walls of steel to be broken that conceal the pain I feel. And though those walls have been my shield against this cruel globe, they also deny me connection to my true soul. My pain can't remain locked away from me when that's my soul locked behind that closed door, dying, praying to be seen. They tried to break me down, they tried to rob my light. They gave me all they had and thought I'd give up the fight, but I stood in that fire and learned to stand my ground. rebuild my sense of worth, the greatest love I ever found. And so you know you can't bring death to a man's soul who's unafraid to go into his depths. Showing when I made it to that space, I softened my eyes and looked my wounded self up in the face, and I cried, you are enough. I am worthy of my own love. I still hope and dream for tomorrow, 'cause I let go of yesterday, and this spark inside that's kept me alive now has become a full-on blaze. This world's still learning, accepting of who I am. They can try and bring me down, 'cause I don't give a damn. I know who I am. I know who I am. I am empathic, my pain has been tragic.